Welcome to Mac Football Forever. I'm Alex. That's Caleb. We're here to talk about the state of the MACtion. This is a series where we go team by team and just kind of give some brief overviews of just where we think that these teams are at. We're here to talk about Eastern, though. It's not the most highest regarded program. Definitely a program that's brought itself to be in games more than out of them, which has been largely the case. You know, say what you will about the record that Eastern's had over the years, but under Chris Creighton, it is just like night and day compared to the Eastern Michigans of old. When you think about EMU football, how do you think about them?
Well, I know that anytime that a team plays Eastern Michigan, I know that Eastern Michigan's capable of playing up to their opponent. And I say up because most of the time they don't have the talent that the team's playing, regardless of who the opponent is. The only time that they typically outclass a team in terms of talent is when they play, a Central Connecticut State. And even those games turn into weird ones from time to time. When Eastern goes into any MAC team's house, I expect it to be like a 24-26 game. I expect the potential of an overtime game to be there. And whatever lack of respect there could be from outside of the program, you know damn well MAC coaches respect Eastern's ability to keep a game good, or at least keep it enough of a clusterfuck to just keep to make it entertaining. They're going to make you work for it. And so that's what I respect most about Chris Creighton's program and the way things have changed over the years.
We've got 5 topics written down in our notes that we want to present to you. The first one being is that just heading into 2020, and I've said it plenty of times before, and I have to remind you as we look back on the season, what kind of team were we looking at to begin with? We were looking at one that was not very prepared. Not that they didn't understand the playbook, but these are guys that just had not seen the field really much at all up until 2020. They were, one of the lowest in returning production percentage. I think at the time it was like 44%. And when I mean at the time, I mean last February, looking forward to 2020. The stats of the players they brought back added up to only 44% of starters coming back. No matter who you are, no matter how good your culture is, it is kind of hard to overcome that. And I shouldn't say just about anybody. I'm sure Alabama could do that. But that did mean that because there's so much inexperience, there were opportunities for guys to break out and to stand out. And on both sides of the ball, we did see new guys pop up. Like Jose Ramirez really made a statement for himself. Tariq Spates was a full-year starter at linebacker. Kempton Shine, he showed up as a cornerback freshman who pretty much won a starting job mid-season. We got a new quarterback with Preston Hutchinson and his buddy Tanner Canoe, who is a walk-on turned scholarship receiver. And all of the running backs were just brand new. Who are some of the guys that immediately stick out in your mind, Caleb?
Sure. And Noski LaFleur is just such a huge
I didn't
upgrade.
Even say his name.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I was just kind of like, oh, wait, hold on. No, yeah, he was absolutely huge for them in the secondary this year. Made waves. The MAC coaches obviously recognized it with him being on the All MAC team. And, he's one of those guys that's going to start the next few years, too, for the Eagles and is really going to thrive just knowing where he's at already talent-wise. So him and, there's obviously some receivers that are going to – that
he's only got one more year, though.
I thought he had 3 more years.
No, he was a JUCO.
Oh, he was a JUCO. Okay, so he's newer to the program. That's my fault.
Yeah, he got a little bit of playing time in 2019, but he didn't have a starting year really up until this time.
Yeah, and I think Alex has made a point too to say that EMU has turned some JUCO guys into really strong guys on the defensive side of the ball and at wide receivers, another spot where they've done that as well, if I remembering correctly. So LaFleur stood out as just as a guy who was new to the program, who was able to do some things. Obviously, you've got guys like Darius Boone being able to, tote the rock a few times in games late in the year. They obviously are hoping for more from the run game next year because it was tug at your shirt collar for most this year. They tend to have a couple defenders every year that make an impact early and keep growing. So excited to see where some of those guys are in a few years.
Yeah, one of the guys that I really liked that came out and played as a freshman was Alex Merritt. He was a redshirt freshman, but he ended up, making a good name for himself along the defensive line. Had just like 1 sack, had a couple tackles for loss and a pass breakup. and a fumble recovery. So he was kind of everywhere. And, I just like the way that he played, especially as a freshman at that position. That's just hard to do. And Preston Hutchinson in his first year as a starter just was not the most impressive. Ran the ball a lot and did okay. While he did have some long runs here and there, and while he did some razzly dazzly stuff in 2019 against Western and beat them again in 2020, thank you. Just not an all around complete package that you want to see out of your quarterback. Sure, there's some developmental, that he could have to get better. But we'll talk about the quarterback room later. I mean, there's always some additions there, but he also just was not a heavy hitter in the passing game, especially deep downfield. Just was not very consistent, and you need that moving forward. Number two, I do want to point out that the strength of this team heading into the season, the coaches believed is the offensive line. This year in 2021, it's probably still the offensive line, and you can't look at the running numbers. We'll get to that in a little bit. You can't look at the rushing average and just like, oh, well, that's offensive line's fault or that's its credit. Lots of moving parts there, man. Just lots of moving parts. And I want to say that more often than not, the front five did their jobs. And this year they're going to be more experienced. They were already hell experienced going into 2020. Now they're going to have my guy Dimitri Douglas from Michigan State, who was just coming in last year and sat out. He's going to come in and add like a lot more depth to tackle. They keep adding guys, experienced, inexperienced to the system that still want to be there. I think this is a good group to lean on. I was hoping that it leaned to more offensive production in 2020 with all of the inexperience around them at the skilled spots, like I said, quarterback, running back, a little bit of receiver. Hopefully the, experience year of 2020, I guess we'll call it. Hopefully it pays off for them in 2021.
I think you're looking at an EMU team that the expectations on my end were never high, and they, in some ways, they still exceeded those expectations early in the year. Earlier in the year, I wasn't sure. I thought like the run game being slow was one of the biggest things keeping them from picking up speed and showing a lot of potential. But then we saw what we saw at the end of the year against Western. So I am excited to see how much better Eastern is at some of those spots, and obviously we'll talk about the quarterback spot where they could be even better.
I do need to touch on, since we are talking about the O-line, James Patton, great offensive line coach for Eastern. Just recently, it was reported a week ago, but now it's made official a couple hours before this recording that he's going back to his alma mater of Miami, and he's going to be an offensive line coach there. As you remember, George Barnett left the O-line OC job from Miami to go to Tulane. Patton, a Red Hawk alum, former tight end, is filling the job there. So Eastern now has to fill an O-line coach. But whoever that coach is, he's going to walk into, a culture of guys that want to work, and he's going to come into a culture of offensive linemen that have stayed together because they want to be there, which is very hard to find in the MAC. But kind of going back to what I already poked on earlier for our third point, one of the consistent weaknesses of this team, for this Eastern team, especially under Creighton, is that running the ball has sucked.
Yeah.
They've sucked. There's just no other way of putting it. I'm not going to look at the numbers because I don't want to vomit while we're recording, but they are chronically at the bottom of the MAC, not just in giving the ball to its running backs, but every time they give the ball to its running backs or let the quarterback keep it, they don't go too far. Sometimes they get some explosive plays, but it's very hard to find them. We thought we were going to see more explosive plays with Darius Boone because if you remember in the Kent State game, he had like 54, 57 yards in the first quarter, and then he left with an injury. When he eventually came back to play two more games, during the year, he didn't play fully healthy, but he was still very explosive. We saw a little bit of Samson Evans too, but it wasn't, again, the best performances we've seen. Just some glimpses of pretty goodness out of that very young running back group where its average age is like 19. I don't know. Like I keep saying it every year, and I guess I'm just tired of saying it. So Caleb, will you just say it for me? Eastern, please get better at running the ball.
Eastern, I don't know if it's play calling or, just you're not teaching something right. You got to get better at running the damn football. You had Shaq Van around for as long as a van lasts on the road and never turned him into like a star. Like, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing?
Yeah, the best running back that Creighton's had was a guy that Ron English recruited, Darius Jackson.
Yeah.
And you can definitively say that because he played in the NFL. I don't know, something's got to give. Hopefully hopefully, experience pays off, but the experience that they're having so far is not even average, which is the troubling part. They've done a good job of getting the O line, I believe, but they just haven't figured out how to hand it off and make it go 30 yards. Haven't
Yeah.
figured that part out.
Again, like if we think the line is the strength and they can't run the ball, that's the coaches. Like it's because the running backs aren't that bad. It's not that there's a lack of talent. Like there is talent. Maybe it's not where you want it to be, but if you think that your offensive line is one of your strengths and you cannot run the ball, that's on you. That's as you as coach.
On paper, and you kind of brought this up earlier, where Eastern does not normally have the kind of talent that you see in the rest of the MAC, especially in the West. I mean, especially in the West when you have to play, NIU, who grooms guys really well, Toledo, who just gets the best players out there, and same with Western too.
Yeah.
It's in a very hard division to begin with. EMU, though, they haven't, again, recruited amazingly, but they've done very well for themselves, especially in the more recent years. Over the past 3 years, they've had 10, 19, and 13 three-star signees join their team, which is, I'm just going to quickly glance at these numbers and do some quick math in my head and say that's more than what they had in the past 5 years before that. If you look at 24/7 composites, if you quickly look at their screen, it gives you, how they rank in total points. And a lot of that is weighted on how many signees they get, especially out of high school. Eastern isn't built to get so many guys out of high school. They do rely heavily on the JUCOs. So the few high school guys that they do get isn't as many as 25. It's closer to 15. So they have to make those 15 that know that they're going to sit and wait behind a couple JUCO guys. They have to make those guys count. And lately they have. They've brought in their average rating of players up to a 3-star average in the past couple of years. Years before that, they were getting pretty close, weren't totally in. And in Creighton's first 4 years there, they weren't even close to getting 3 stars with much repetition or on average. And I think we're seeing that more in defense, don't you believe? Because I'm thinking of just some guys off the top of my head that, came through as freshmen and got some early playing time. Kempton Shine, I told you about, won a starting job at corner. Mark Lee, he's done fine for himself. Jared Vines, they get some good defensive backs. My question is, where are the in-state guys? If you look at this year's recruiting class, sure, it's fine. I told you it's a good-looking class. Not one of those guys is from Michigan. I don't know how much of the pandemic had to do with that, but not one of those guys is from the in-state school.
No, and even over the last 3 years, as Alex's chart kind of lays out, there's only two top 50 guys total over the last three, like 2020 or 2019, 2020, 2021. And like this is an exercise that Alex has kind of put me through too before. He's like, hey Caleb, guess where this top 25 guy goes? It's not Eastern Michigan. It's literally any other program. And I know some, I think Michigan struggles with that as well, like misses some of the top guys that go out of state.
Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't be framing it like as a thing that Eastern does bad on. Sure, it could do better because there are other MAC schools that go into Michigan and get, top 50 guys.
Yeah.
But a lot of those top 50 guys to begin with, I feel like are leaving the state more, not just, to other MAC programs, but to like other Big Ten programs, Penn State, LSU, Alabama, Clemson's doing a better job. A lot of these other schools that want to travel for talent know that they're going to Michigan to get some of the best talent to get away from Michigan and Michigan State. And then Michigan and Michigan State have to kind of go a little bit lower too.
Yeah. And it's, EMU seems comfortable in that. They get guys, these JUCO guys from, like the Southeast and get a few, I think if correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say a few from like California as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The receivers.
A lot of good programs you'll see get guys from like Hutchinson in Kansas and Iowa Central and Iowa Western out in Iowa.
Teran Rush, he was a guy that he grew up in West Virginia. I don't remember where he played his college ball at right now. I'm sorry, or his JUCO ball, but he's West Virginia bred.
Yeah,
like those JUCO pipelines, you find guys that will all over the country that want to and will play for Eastern, which is great. That's what you want. But it's just another thing. Like that's the trade-off. We're kind of losing some in-state guys in the process.
Yeah, and they gotta be where their identity is. I do think that it would behoove them to grab to finally make that breakthrough. And I don't know who the Michigan guy is as far as the staff is for recruiting, but you would think somebody's got to like have that hookup with a coach and somewhere in if it's the Detroit metropolitan area or where else in the state this comes from. But I sure would think it would help to have a couple guys make it from the top recruits in the state every year.
Yeah, there's like more guys coming in from Colorado, which is it's just weird to think about.
It's so bizarre. Yeah, I mean, whatever works, but you should add a baseline, and you should still have a guy or two, I would think.
Moving on to our final topic, though, Chris Creighton, he's in his now 8th year, coached 7 years at Eastern. He is 30-51, 0-3 in bowl games. You cannot judge the man by the records. Like it's just impossible to just look at every college football coach and just judge them by the records. Creighton has done a freaking phenomenal job at Eastern. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but just the fact that Eastern looks like a football culture that, one, just aesthetically is good looking as any out there. Number two, is filled with a bunch of guys that want to be there and want to improve their game there or improve their coaching game, whatever. And this is a guy that, people say, why isn't Michigan State? Why aren't they picking up the phone to hire Creighton? Why isn't so-and-so picking up the phone to hire Creighton? You and I are not to say what Creighton's desires are in coaching, but I hope that his only desire is to stay in Ypsilanti. And at this rate, I mean, does it even look like he wants to leave? Does it look like he wants to leave?
No, and knowing that Creighton's background, I mean, knowing like he was a Drake guy, he hasn't really been at programs, at least in my understanding, that are like where he seeks the limelight, where he wants to be the leader of the powerhouse. Like it's not.
Yeah, he said it before that he's a small school guy for life.
Yeah, and he's very comfortable in that. Like making a school like Drake in Des Moines, where the big game in town, even if you live in the capital of Iowa, you're still caring about Iowa State football. Creighton's just fine feeling comfortable in Ann Arbor, where the big boys are down the road. The pressure isn't on him to win the MAC. It's make this program respectable. That doesn't mean the goal isn't to win the MAC every year, but what are you asking him to do? You've asked him to bring your program to legitimacy, and it's not something that 90% of the people who they could have hired would be able to do. And he's kept them there. Not only has he brought them there, he's kept them there, and they haven't dipped off. As long as he's there, I expect that to continue. I don't expect even a bad season doesn't diminish what Eastern's capable of and where they've reached in my eyes. And that's kind of where I'm at. That's where Eastern resides in my mind, is you should always respect them as long as Creighton's coach, because of where they were before.
Yeah, and it's not the end all be all, but when I look at the transfer portal, that's when I look at and kind of make my judgment of, this is filled with a culture of guys that want to be there and want to stay there. Because it's not just this year where, as of right now, there's only 2 guys leaving. 2 guys that could have played, really, like Keon Williams and DJ Jackson. They're only losing 2 guys to transfers this year. I think last year they only lost 3 or 4. Never lost like a huge like starter or impact guy outside of Keon, really. And the guys that do leave, they don't seem like they leave like frustratedly either. They're like, fuck, man, this is the best move for me, but I'm gonna miss all my guys in Ipsy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's for me as an alum, it's just really, really nice to see that is the state of affairs. Like, I've lived with bad football my entire life. My high school team at the time was ass. My NFL team is the Lions. My college team is Eastern Michigan. So I know how to be okay and chill with bad football. But those guys have to live through it. It's easier for them to say, fuck this and walk away, but they're just not. And so, again, for me as an alum, it's just nice to see that this is the state of affairs. And Creighton's just done a good job of keeping it super professional and fun for everybody along the way. And that's kind of what you want to see out of any coach at this level, I believe.
And I think as long as Chris Creighton's there, you can hold out hope that one day Eastern Michigan will Akron its way into a MAC championship game.
Oh no, I want to win it outright. I don't want no Akron bullshit. I want to win it outright. But Caleb, I think that wraps it up for Eastern. Do you have any parting thoughts on the Eagles before we splitsy daisies?
So again, we're going to be looking forward to what the quarterback battle looks like when it comes around in the fall. Obviously, Ben Bryant's a big transfer pickup for those guys, and
Oh my God, I forgot to even mention him. But yeah, Ben Bryant's coming in, baby.
yeah, but I mean, it's just because we've already talked about it like exhaustingly, so I didn't think it was important to like say like this is the program changing quarterback move. But what it does do is give them a little bit more. It definitely gives them a reason to be a little bit more excited heading into next year about what the offense could be capable of.
Again, that's Caleb over there. I'm Alex over here. Follow us on the Twitters at MacFB Forever. Follow, like, all that stuff. Tell your friends about us. We're fun.